Hi, and welcome to this week's Mortgage Broker broadcast. Can you believe we're at the end of January already? Today, the day the podcast is released is 31st of January. We're already a month into the year. We're already 1 month into the quarter, the first quarter of 2024. And so we're a third in already of the first quarter. And what I wanted to do with this week's podcast, really on the back of, obviously, the last 4 weeks, the podcast has been about the difference between resolutions and habits and the importance of habits. So what I wanted to do just really at this juncture is take a time to reflect, review what you've achieved so far, look at what you've achieved in January, really to make sure that it just keeps you on track. Reviewing and reflecting just keeps you on track to achieve what you wanted to achieve in the quarter, and also as well keeps you on track to achieve what you wanted to achieve in 2024, what you want to achieve this year. And it's important that you do have time to reflect. Why is that? Why is it important? Because you can only truly know what you've achieved or what you haven't achieved this month if you do take time to review and reflect. And it's important because what I don't want you to happen, what I don't want to happen is that you just drift again through another quarter, another year without actually taking the time to look at what you've achieved on various levels. And we'll talk a lot more about that in the podcast. But like I say, it is very important to take the time to review and reflect. And at the end of the month, it's a great time to review and reflect. And like the first month of the year as well is a great time to review and reflect. So we will get into that. But first of all, obviously the last 4 weeks of the podcast has all been about resolutions and habits. And Leigh Rowland has been a great guest, really helped me to get the message out there. Leigh and I did the 4 weeks podcast together. We learned a lot from each other. And yeah, as you know, Leigh's on the podcast every single week with the Mortgage Broker Bulletin. So we're going to get back to that now in terms of the normal, regular way that we do the podcast. And so we've got Leigh back on the podcast doing the regular Mortgage Broker Bulletin. So welcome Leigh back on the podcast. And here's his weekly Mortgage Broker Bulletin.
Hello everybody and welcome to the first episode of the new series in the Mortgage Broker Bulletin. Firstly, thank you very much to Craig Skelton for having me on for his podcast for 4 weeks. We started talking about resolutions and the formation of habits. Really interesting to listen to Craig and also put my views on, so I'm chuffed that I was able to do that and develop myself as I went along. But now we're back to the bulletin. Wow, I mean, what a start to the year. If I went through every lender which has actually reduced their rates or changed their criteria, it'd be the same length as a podcast. So I'm not going to do that. I think generally things are looking a little bit more positive. I mean, the number of inquiries coming in across the market, from what I can gather of talking to the brokers I know, is promising. Workload though has probably gone through the roof because I'm to rewrite quite a lot of business, but that's the nature of the beast. Unfortunately, we've got to keep our clients happy, and there's so much information out there for them at the minute. They can pick up that information about rates, reductions, so we need to be on the ball and make sure they're well informed and educated. That's it for me for today. Just a thank you to Craig. Hope you're all doing well. Hope business is good, and we'll really get into it in the next one. So onwards, upwards and forwards. I'll speak to you soon.
Thanks for that, Leigh. And again, thank you for your help and support on the podcast over the last 4 weeks. And again, taking the time and effort to get back on with the bulletin and that regular slot. So yeah, what I wanted to do, as I explained before Leigh's bulletin, was I want to just take the time to make sure you understand the importance of reviewing and reflecting the month of January, because like I say, and the real 3 points that I wanted to focus on was point one was about taking the time to review and reflect. Point two was making sure that you are true to yourself and honest to yourself with regards to reviewing and reflecting. And the last one is about reward as well, which I've touched on before in terms of when you're reviewing and reflecting, but I wanted to make sure that we pick that up as well. So yeah, they're the 3 points I wanted to talk about on the podcast. So the first one is the importance of taking the time to review and to reflect on the month that has just passes by. Feedback from mortgage brokers. It's been a great start to the year. It seems to be very positive in terms of the market inquiries coming through. Leigh touched on that in terms of the bulletin as well from that point of view. So it is important to take the time right now, right this week, to look at and review January. Why is it important to do it now? Well, today is the 31st of January. This is the day when it's released. What I would say is today, tomorrow, the latest really Sunday of this week, you should be reviewing January, because if you don't do it this week, if you don't do it Friday or the weekend, if that's when you feel better, I say it has to be this week. And if you don't do it this week, then you will just then drift into February. You won't review January. You'll just be back flying by the seat of your pants again, and we'll just move into the quarter. And really, all the plans, all the actions, all the goals, all the habits you wanted to achieve in 2024 will fall down very quickly if you don't take the time to review. So, like I said, the first point is making sure you take the time to review. What also is also important as well is it needs to be away from your normal workplace. So get rid of those distractions, making sure you turn your phone off or emails off or whatever the distractions are, making sure that you're away from your normal place of work, whether that's coffee shop, a different office, or just out walking with total fresh air, giving you that total clarity. Because, like I say, if you're in your normal place of work, your emails will be open, you'll be thinking about other things to do. So just take the time to be away from your normal place of work when you're reviewing, and just look at, like I said, no distractions, and really look at what actions you wanted to achieve in January. What goals did you want to achieve in January? What new habits or built on existing habits did you want to achieve in January? And how January compares to last year. So that's a good thing to look at in terms of growth and you moving forward, comparing what you achieved in January last year to what you achieved in January this year. So, like I said, the first point is make sure you take time to review. And it's just not a quick 2-minute job, 5-minute job. Really do drill down, dig deep in terms of what you wanted to achieve in January this year. So, and then moving on to that is the second point is it's important to be true to yourself. I always talk about running your own race, having your own goals, achieve what you wanted to achieve, what growth looks like for you. So again, with the second point of reviewing and reflecting on January, it's about being true to yourself as well and being honest to yourself, not a case of just skipping over it or not being true to yourself. The only way you can learn, you can develop, you can achieve your goals, the way that you can enforce new habits is about being true to yourself, being honest with yourself. And also as well, I've sort of seen some brokers which have overpromised and under-delivered to themselves, which is again, I've talked about that plenty of times before, which is really criminal that you're doing something. Probably criminal is probably a bit of a harsh word, but it is because again, if you're overpromising and under-delivering to yourself, you need to stop that right now. You need to get out of that habit because it's important that you are true to yourself when you're looking at reflecting and reviewing as well. Because if no one holds you accountable, if you've got nobody, colleague or a firm business owner or whatever your setup is your setup. If you've got no one that's holding you accountable, you have to be true to yourself, honest to yourself, because then you will hold yourself accountable. And that is very, very important because you need to have some sort of accountability when you're talking about reviewing and you're talking about reflecting. So again, and as well as that, with regards to being true to yourself and over promising and things like that. This is your self development. When you are taking the time to reflect, to review, being honest, being true to yourself, this will help you develop. This is part of your self development. Holding yourself accountable is part of your self development, and you need to see it that way. So, this is investing time in yourself and investing time in your business. You cannot feel guilty by taking some time out this week and reviewing and reflecting. It's important that you don't feel guilty about that because it's to then spring on to February, which I'll come on to a second, and spring on to the next month. It's important that you do that. And like I say, this is investing in yourself. This isn't investing in your business. So do not feel guilty. And the last point, and just as important as the first 2 points, is it's about reward as well. So if you have achieved, if you have set goals and you have achieved them, if you have taken action, made impact in your business, it's important to reward yourself. And whatever that reward looks like to you is absolutely fine. It might be a case of review and reflect. Today's Wednesday when the podcast goes out, review and reflect tomorrow, Thursday, and then take Friday off, or spend time of the weekend with people that are important rather than having distractions of your business. Whatever, or it might be a financial reward, or it might be some sort of gift, whatever reward looks like for you. It's important to do that, because if you have achieved, it will set that positive mindset again. And if you're rewarding yourself, and if you, it's then will send that trigger in your mind, without getting into too much detail on the old psychology of side of things and things like that, which I don't want to talk about in the podcast. Basically, if you reward yourself on your achievements in January because you have achieved, you're more likely to achieve in February, because that trigger in your mind is that you've rewarded yourself. And I think that is important as well, to make sure that that's part of your plan, to reward yourself as well. So yeah, I didn't want to get into too much detail in this podcast at the end of the 4 weeks of the habit podcast that we've done, because we did get into a lot of detail on those 4 weeks. I just wanted to talk about the importance of reviewing and reflecting. And so, yeah, just to recap, make sure you review January before it's too late this week. Certainly by Sunday, the latest, you want to make sure that you've taken the time to review what you've achieved in January. What were your goals? How have you done? How have you gone against those goals? What actions did you want to take? How have you gone with those? And the habits as well, and holding yourself accountable. Take the time to be away from your normal place of work. So that's important as well. Be honest with yourself. Be true to yourself with this. And the last thing is, I touched on there, making sure you reward yourself as well if you have achieved and you're feeling very positive about what you've achieved in January. Like I say, and then now once you've done that and taken the time to reflect on January, can you then truly put plans, goals, habits, actions, all those in place for February? So it's important to take the time to reflect, review, and then once you've done that, and what we've talked about, is then bang on into February, game on into February. What are your plans? What are your actions? What does February look like for you and your business? So hopefully that made sense. Thank you very much for listening. Any comments, thoughts, or feedback on the podcast, as always, please leave them in terms of the platform, however you listen to it, on terms of the podcast. And anything you want to talk about, anything you want, including the podcast, please leave comments. And as always, thank you to everyone who's listened and subscribed. And the important thing, as always, is don't forget to run your own race.